Good afternoon or good morning if you're on the West Coast. Um, Welcome to this virtual workshop on leveraging federal funding for aggregated distributed energy resources. My name is Jeff Loiter. I am part of the Center for Partnerships and Innovation at NARUC, and this webinar is presented in collaboration with our friends at NASEO, the National Association of State Energy officials, represented here today by Rod Sobin, who I believe you'll hear from at the end of the session. Both NARUC and NASEO are really grateful to the Department of Energy's Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy, whose funding enables us to provide this resource and many, many others, including the support of a great team of experts from RMI who are helping us out, including Avery McAvoy, who will be helping us quite a bit today, and you'll hear from in a moment. So if we could move along here. This is the first of 3 workshops that make up the second module for our Distributed Energy Resources Integration and Compensation curriculum for this year. So I want to provide a little context for attendees who may not have been engaged with this work yet. This effort is prompted by a few key factors. Briefly, the number and variety of DERs that are connecting to the electric system is growing. Order 2222 will result in a greater participation of aggregations of these DERs in wholesale power markets, and that means the need to plan for and account for the operation of aggregated DERs. At the same time, most DERs are connected at the distribution level, and therefore for distribution systems operated by a regulated utility, that brings them under the purview of the state energy regulators, who are our members. But more broadly, this work is under the purview of state energy offices who set policies related to energy resources in their state. And both of these groups are going to be responsible for ensuring that the increase and participation of DERs and aggregations of DERs supports the safe, reliable, and affordable operation of our grid. So to do that, they need information and resources and guidance about technical and economic issues and policy issues, including integration, interconnection, compensation, et cetera. So this holds true also across the entire electric system, not just the distribution level, but up to the bulk power system. And it's true both in areas with and without wholesale energy markets. So regardless of the situation that you yourself are in, we hope you'll find this relevant to your experience. So let me tell you a little bit about the DER INC initiative on the next slide that we've put together to convene and support state members in their decision making. Our objectives with this, which we hope you'll feel we are addressing in today's discussion and in future discussions. We want to inform decision makers. We want to highlight risks and opportunities presented by aggregations of DERs and make sure that different perspectives are provided for your awareness. To do this, we are guided by an advisory group of both NARUC and NASEO members. We're really grateful to them for their input and guidance. So if you're on from one of our advisory group members, thank you. So let me put today in context here on the last slide that I'm going to speak to. As I noted before, we are now in module 2 of this 3-module curriculum. In our first module, we tried to provide a foundation for you for aggregations of DERs with 3 webinars on the grid services that these resources can provide, how to assess the value of those services, and then options for compensating the owners of the resources for providing that value to the system. You can find recordings and presentations from all 3 of those webinars on NARUC's website. I will put a link to the chat, a link to that in our chat here when I'm done speaking in a minute. So in module 2 now, we are focusing on 3 topics in greater detail. Our advisor group helped identify these, but we also considered what we heard from people who participated in our first module. Later this year, we'll take an even closer look at some aspects of aggregated DERs. Our plans are still developing, but again, we certainly want to hear from you about the topics that are of greatest interest to you. I will turn it over to Avery now. She'll talk about both what's coming for the rest of this module and give you more details about today's agenda. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Jeff. Hey folks, I'm Avery. I'm a senior associate on the carbon-free electricity team at RMI, and I also help deliver our virtual power plant partnership, or VP3. So this is a topic near and dear to my heart. Very excited to talk about this with you today. As Jeff mentioned, Module 2 is focuses on hot topics to explore the cutting edge application. So we're doing a set of 3 shorter virtual workshops. This is the first one, leveraging federal fundings for aggregated DERs. And the second workshop we have is actually coming up next week on aggregated DER interconnection, another very hot topic in industry right now. And then we will wrap with our third workshop May 1st on integrated distribution system planning for these types of projects. So if you enjoy today's activities, which I hope you will, these are very interactive workshops. They are virtual and we'll be using a virtual whiteboarding software. So we look forward to interacting with all of you beyond just presentations and look forward to that. So Katerina, if you can click to the next slide. Today's agenda, the objectives are the following. So we would love to provide an overview of the landscape of federal funding opportunities for aggregated DER programs from industry experts. We'll be hearing from the Department of Energy on this from Dr. Teresa Lawrence. Then we'll demystify the connection between accessing these funding opportunities for aggregated DERs to achieve policy outcomes. We'll be hearing from a funding recipient, Bo Chen of ComEd, to actually present on one of those projects. And then the second half, which will be for state agency members only, is an interactive breakouts to discuss areas of collaboration and next steps on how to actually access these resources with fellow regulators, state energy offices, and state agency members. So after those 2 presentations, I have a couple Q&A for the speakers, but also we'll be pulling some from chat. So definitely recommend you ask your questions in chat and I can pull from those. We'll have breakouts for about 30 minutes working in Mural. Mural is a virtual online whiteboarding software. I'll do a demo of how to use it for those folks who are unfamiliar, but we do recommend that you're at a desktop computer for this so we can all journal on the same canvas together virtually. And I'd love to state that this is recorded right now, the first portion of the workshop, and then we'll stop recording once we go to breakouts for the second half. So just noting that. I will request that if folks are able to rename themselves in Zoom, that would be useful. So there's 2 ways to do this. One, you can go to your thumbnail and there's the 3 dots in the upper right corner and you can click rename. You can also do this from the participants panel and you'll see a similar drop down for your name under more to rename. So if you can include your organization, that'll be helpful for us as we go into breakouts and try to figure out who's part of an agency that sits under NASIO and who sits under NARUC. So we are looking forward to talking today. I think with that, I will hand it off to our first presenter, Dr. Teresa Lawrence, who is the Director of State, Local, Tribal, and Territorial Policy at the Department of Energy. Teresa, thanks for being with us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to join today's workshop to discuss federal opportunities and resources and share information on incentives that can catalyze and spur investments in systems. Of course, we've been talking about virtual power plants, VPPs, or aggregations of electrified grid-connected devices. If we go to the next slide, please. This is just a snapshot. So DOE offers a range of formula programs and competitions that support distribution and grid transformation programs to enhance grid operations and increase reliability, interoperability, flexibility, and efficiency. The programs in this space often focus on innovative approaches and designs and are implemented across the agency by different offices. So that's sort of why in the first column here, just an example of some of the offices that are offering some of these grants and other technical assistance opportunities and resources, and they are funded by the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, the Inflation Reduction Act, but quite a few are also funded through just regular annual appropriations. So the programs, they vary in scope, objectives, they have a range of due dates for applications, and they rely on strategic partnerships, as has been mentioned here. Those assembled here today and other entities, including like data providers or power sector utilities, electric grid operators, builders, contractors, architects, engineers, design and construction professionals, building codes officials, I should say, energy efficiency organizations, and many other stakeholders, including apprenticeship programs, workforce development, that type of thing. So a very comprehensive set of partnerships are often referenced within these funding opportunity announcements or FOAs. So partnerships are key between regulators, state policymakers, utilities, other private sector entities to maximize the equitable distribution of VPP benefits, including grid cost savings, good jobs, resilience, reliability, and more. The list of eligible applicants for each of these FOAs, funding opportunity announcements, they are provided in each FOA. So please check, there's a section within each of them to indicate who can be the prime applicant, who should be the subrecipient, or what the teaming partnership should be comprised of. So this slide shows a sampling of programs with upcoming due dates for the most part. There are some that are in the second round of programming, and there's many others that have just passed, some in which they're in the concept paper phase. So it's ongoing, it's in process, and applications that are under review. Many others are also on the horizon, so please stay tuned. So the programs highlighted are from 4 offices, such as the Office of Electricity, the Flexible Flexible Innovative Transformer Technologies, or FITS program. This is offered in coordination with the CSER office, the Office of Cybersecurity, Energy Security, and Emergency Response. And the objective of this FOA is to stimulate innovative designs, prototypes, and field demonstration exercises of advanced distribution or power transformers. For example, flexible, modular, scalable, hybrid, and solid-state transformers that can be readily utilized across a range of distribution and transmission scale applications. So a lot of the information, as you see, the application due date is coming up pretty soon, so it's been on the streets for a while. This is a good opportunity that focuses on that innovation to really help to enhance the type of grid integration. Another example of a program, which is in its second round, comes from the Grid Deployment Office, or GDO. I'll look at the second program listed here, the TFP, Transmission Facilitation Program. This provides federal support to overcome the financial hurdles in the development of large-scale new transmission lines, upgrading of existing transmission, and the connection of microgrids in select states and US territories. And we see what the amount, up to 1.2 billion here. The third example I wanted to highlight is in the Office of State and Community Energy Programs Office. They have a lot, especially for state energy offices, that can really help to move the needle and close some of the funding gaps with these programs. One of the newer programs announced recently is Seasite, also in that third column there, the third row, Community Sparking Investment in Transformative Energy. And this provides financial awards and technical assistance to advance community projects in a variety of technologies, such as building electrification or electric transportation, energy infrastructure upgrades, microgrid development and deployment, renewable energy, resilience hubs, and more. And then in the EERE, Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy Office, in the last column there, swifter, solar and wind in a connection for future transmission. This funding opportunity announcement is for 10 million to develop new analytical tools and software solutions that will facilitate the secure and reliable integration of solar energy, wind energy, and energy storage systems to the national grid. So this is not an exhaustive list by any means, but the intent here is to show ways in which these opportunities can provide relief to the upfront cost of financing DERs, overcome installation challenges, and help to make DERs more affordable through grants and loans and tax credits and prizes and innovative demonstrations and technical assistance for VPP-enabled DER adoption. There are some other offices not even mentioned here, some of which I'm sure the group here may be knowledgeable of, like coming through the Office of Technology Transitions. Their pathways to commercial liftoff reports. VPPs are one of the reports, and Chapter 4 of that report includes funding opportunities. And then coming through the Loan Programs Office, they have their Title 17 clean energy financing programs, such as the SEFI, State Energy Financing Institution, and EIR, Energy Infrastructure Reinvestment Program, which offers $5 billion to carry out up to $250 billion in loan authority for projects that retool, repurpose, repower, and replace energy infrastructure that is already retired. And then also just other programs that come to mind, other offices, some of the new offices that came about through the bipartisan infrastructure law, such as the Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations, the Solve It Prize, which provides $5 million for innovative clean energy solutions, and other offices that are that will help to move the needle in this space. So what was one I would mention recently announced in partnership with some of the groups here is the Clean Energy Connector, a digital tool that makes community solar subscriptions with savings more accessible to households that are participating in LIHEAP, low-income government-run programs. And even though the pilot phase is just for DC, Illinois, New Mexico, this will be open for additional states with active community solar programs pretty soon. So just generally, energy.gov, it's there's the general clearinghouse energy.gov/infrastructure, but for the real up-to-date announcements of these that are coming out, because I know it may seem overwhelming to keep up with a lot of the upcoming due dates, trying to put together the different opportunities or see what connects clearly with any states, local governments that may have clean energy plans, climate action plans, sustainability plans, or just plans for enabling VPPs more effectively and efficiently. So energy.gov/offices or energy.gov/newsroom, like all of these announcements, of course, all of that will be sent along, but just wanted to provide a snapshot. So if we can move to the next slide. In addition to the grants, prizes, loans, rebates, technical assistance, I just wanted to take a few minutes and round it out with mentioning the historic tax credits, which can also play a significant role in financing interactive clean energy infrastructure. This may be a reminder for some or a primer for others, but just as a reminder that the Inflation Reduction Act, or IRA, and expanded, and enhanced the investment tax credits and production tax credits for businesses and commercial taxable entities that install or own clean energy electricity equipment. So of course, investor-owned utilities can participate in this space, and IRA provided a decade of certainty of clean energy financial support to manufacturers, installers, investors, and it provides a first time per unit production incentive for solar, wind, batteries, and critical minerals. And also for the first time through IRA, governmental and tax-exempt entities, which I know many state energy offices are in partnership with, including agencies and instrumentalities of states and local governments, can also participate through a tool called elective pay. So elective pay, we often refer to it as cash for clean energy. It's a new IRA resource that provides a cash payment to tax-exempt entities for installing clean energy technologies. So this payment is equivalent to the amount of the dollar amount that a tax-paying entity would receive in tax credits. And just the high-level example provided here, if a local government invests $1 million in EV charging stations and other eligible clean energy technologies at a community center, it can receive the 30% in the form of a $300,000 cash payment. So even though it's a tax credit, it's received after the clean energy property or equipment, after that is placed into service, it's turned on, it's producing, it can help to reduce the overall financing costs once you go through the process, and you can claim it on the back end. And just a disclaimer, as we always say when we are providing information on tax credits, that this is an overview. It's not itself tax guidance. So always recommended to consult a tax attorney or a tax advisor for planned projects and refer to the guidance. So a lot of these links here, these FAQs have been updated over time. So if you've consulted it previously, they have been adding answers to questions based on what comes in, as well as the final rules that were finalized a couple of weeks ago. So if we move to the next slide, this just shows who the eligible entities are, as I've mentioned, and the final rule clarifies that taxable rural electric cooperatives are also applicable entities. And, often working through a third-party developer to own the system. I know local governments, wherever the installation is occurring, once they cannot own the system, to be able to take advantage of the tax credits, often have to take a haircut in the amount of credit actually received. So the resource and opportunity is key, since it allows the full amount to remain with the owner of the asset. Next slide. So this is just the 12 credits that are available for elective pay. And they are in the areas of generation, fuels, manufacturing, carbon management, and vehicles. But most of the questions that we get, and it seems like most of the demand is for the 48 or 48E, the clean electricity tax credits, 45Y production tax credits, as well as the 45W, right there on the bottom, the credit for clean commercial vehicles, and 30C. Credit for alternative fuel vehicle refueling, so EV charging infrastructure, very popular one to incorporate. So of course, project owners cannot claim both at the same time for the same property. So typically one is chosen, and it's based on whether the cash payment is based on the size and the cost of the project. If you want that payment, one time, or you based on the PTC, to have the cash flow over time. As we said, this is a decade. A few differences between tax credits and other DOE grants that I wanted to highlight. The tax credits are generally non-competitive. A project only needs to meet the criteria to receive credit, with a few exceptions, and they can be combined, which is so neat. Tax credits can be combined with federal grants and forgivable loans up to the total cost of the project, and tax credits are earned once the project is complete. So just going through the process with the pre-filing registration, there's a tool that the IRS has developed, very user-friendly. There's a user guide. Yes, it is 70 pages, but it is a step-by-step for claiming, how to set up the account and all of the things that you go through. And as of last week, Treasury announced that about 500 entities have registered through this tool for more than 45,000 projects or facilities. So this shows that there is interest in this resource, and it can really help to finance clean energy projects. So just to round us out with the possible bonuses, if you go to the next slide, this shows that there are bonuses in addition to the 30% ITC. You can get 10% if it's located in an energy community, 10% for domestic content, and 10 to 20% if you're in a low-income community or an Indian land, or if more than 50% of the offtake of the system is going to an affordable housing, low income building, qualified building. So all of all of these instructions, but this just goes to show how this can really help, this opportunity, help in funding the cost, so that if, going back to our initial example of the system, that if for the $1 million project, you can get up to the 70% tax credit for taxable entities, but also 700,000 for tax exempt entities. And then lastly, if we just just to wrap up here, if we go to the next slide, it just shows an example of fleet electrification. I know as far as VPPs are concerned, EVs plus charging infrastructure, as well as solar microgrids, what you can take the opportunity of for the tax credit. And then the last slide just wants to with what the process is. So it's a very intuitive process flow here. And I think when you look at all of the grants, the loans, and the different funding opportunities, coupled with those that can be paired with the tax credit, this can really help to move the needle to help to install the distributed energy resources and to have that aggregation to really achieve the integration with the grid. So with that, I will complete my presentation. So thanks.
Amazing. Thank you, Dr. Lawrence. Appreciate that overview. And I do invite folks to add your questions into the chat. We'll have time for a Q&A. Now I'll be handing it over to Bo Chen, who is a principal engineer at Commonwealth Edison, to share about their project and how they think about leveraging federal funding.
Thank you, everybody. Yeah, this is Bo Chen from ComEd, and I'm very glad to present our DOE grant recently got awarded, and also introduce our previously the approach we used to apply for the federal grant. So our project is called ICF, internally interoperable control framework. Yeah, next one, please. Yeah, just to generally introduce ComEd, the full name Commonwealth Edison Company, which is one of the 6 utilities owned by Exelon Company, which is the parent company for ComEd. And ComEd is the only utility in Midwest, and the rest of 5 utilities are on the East Coast. So we have 6,400 employees, and we are serving North Illinois, including the Chicago area, and we are serving around 4 million customers, with the peak load being around 22 gigawatt in 2023, and we have 500,000 distribution transformers, and we have the primary distribution feeders across 6,000 miles. We also have a relatively smaller footprint for transmission system, being 5,800 miles, and we have among all the distribution feeders, we have 93% overhead and 7% underground cables. So next slide, please. Thanks. So as I mentioned, our ICF project, it has a long title. It's called the Deployment of a Community-Oriented Interoperable Control Framework for Aggregating and Integrating DERs and other grid edge devices. So we, for the total cost for the project is 116 million, and we will receive 50 million from the federal government, and we will contribute 66 million cost share. And for ComEd, we will contribute around 50 million, and we also have a long list of partners. Will also contribute around 16 million cost share together. So the project will go through 5 years from 2024 to 2029. And regarding the technical scope, the problem we're gonna address is to get the real-time awareness of the DERs as well as other grid assets along the feeder, as well as behind the meter, so that we can collect the information from the feeder and the behind meter resources, DERs, so that for us to develop the corresponding models to simulate and to forecast the DER and the customer behaviors. Then the next problem to be addressed is how to manage those behind the meter resources and the front of the meter resources efficiently. So in this project, the technology solution we propose to develop is to develop this interoperable control framework, and technically we divide it into the scope into 4 layers. The first layer is on the bottom, which is to deploy the hardware sensor and the grid edge controllers that will enable us to collect the real-time data. And also we will deploy the behind meter controller and on the meter smart grid chips, as well as the EV chargers. So that we have the visibility and the controllability over the grid assets. So the second layer is to deploy the communication infrastructure to satisfy all the communication requirements of the hardware and the software. So third layer is the data fusion platform, which is to aggregate the data sources, the data sources from different sensors and the controllers, so that we can get a more comprehensive visibility over the feeders and the customers. The top layer is the interoperable control framework layer. That is where we can develop all the data analytics use cases, as well as the control use cases. And we can integrate those use cases with the existing platforms, such as ADMS and the DERMS. On the customer side, we will also develop the corresponding use cases for a virtual power plant, for DER optimization, and the power flow optimization. Those are all for the grid operations, but just because they are more close to the customer side, so we put it under the customer side function category. So as I mentioned, we have different types of partners working with us during this project. We have community partners, which is a critical part for this project for us to collect the feedback from our communities and to develop the technology and deploy the devices accordingly in order to satisfy their specific demand and the requirements for the resilience and efficiency purposes. And we will have the innovation technology providers to provide their technology and for the pilot and the demonstration purposes. And we will work with traditional vendors on the reclosers, capacitor banks, and to work with them to integrate the new technologies with our existing platforms. And lastly, we have the subject matter experts. Those are mainly the university partners who have a tremendous experience of working on the federal grants and also the research and development capabilities for the use case development. So we have a large project team to work together, and as you can imagine, that requires a lot of coordination, collaboration with external and internal stakeholders. And for that, I will introduce later. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the use cases that we are envisioning to be developed under this project. I will not go through them one by one, but on the left column, those are the use cases that can be directly enabled by the sensor and the controller deployment, and those use cases comes with those sensor and controllers, so that we can get them immediately. And the middle column are the use cases that we will develop using based on the data fusion platform, meaning when we have multiple data sources integrated together, and that will provide more values for us to develop the more comprehensive and useful use cases. Here you can see the first 3: linear state estimation, load disaggregation. Those are for the visibility and DER. The visibility purposes, the DER, EV, real-time hosting capability are for the renewable integration use cases. So the third group are for the reliability and the resilience use cases. So then the red column is for the are the use cases enabled by the interoperable control framework. Those are for the controlling purposes, and the virtual power plant and the demand response are considered in this project. But the way we implement that is through the behind meter controller, EV charger, and all the way go through the data fusion platform that can enable to make more efficient decisions to control the power flow and to satisfy the aggregator demand. So yeah, so I think next slide, please. We're gonna introduce the grant, the federal grant life cycle, and how we apply for the federal grants. So actually, at the COMED, I'm with the emerging technology group, and our group has been leading and participating a large number of DOE grants for the past few years. And we have been working with ERE, CSER, OE, and recently GDO offices on various topics. And I would say we have a lot of experiences to share. And the diagram I'm showing on this slide is just to show the life cycle of a typical federal grants. It starts from the grant capture phase that include the funding opportunity release, where we get the FOA, funding opportunity announcement document from DOE or federal government to specify what the topics they are looking for, what technologies or what the problems that to be addressed using this federal grant. Then typically at the COMED, what we do is we first socialize this funding opportunity with the internal stakeholders as well as external stakeholders. For internal stakeholders, we just check with the related groups if they have I would say if they have any projects or roadmap that can potentially cover the topics in the funding opportunity announcement, and also we will check with them any resources they can provide, and any specific locations that their project will be deployed. So with those information, we aggregate those information together. We have a better idea like what resources we can leverage and what technologies we can deploy in the next few years. In the meanwhile, we reach out to external stakeholders that we worked with previously, or any new stakeholders that we think they can provide the corresponding technology solutions. So with those information aggregated together, we have a better idea, like if or not we're gonna pursue this funding opportunity, and if yes, what kind of technology or concept we're gonna propose for the proposals. So I think this is the key part to start with, and then when we move to the concept paper and the full proposal preparation, and that requires more engagement with other teams such as like supply, legal, compliance, to make sure whatever we propose in the proposal is how do I say, it's compliant with all the regulations from inside, from internal, as well as the compliance from the DOE. So that with that all figured out, we move forward to draft the proposals by working with the previously mentioned internal and external partners. So so meanwhile, I think another topic is to figure out how much cost share we can provide. Normally, I think it's case by case, but normally we will match the federal grant using our cost share, and I think it involves a lot of conversations with internal supply team, and so because we typically we use two systems. So from DOE, we have federal share and the cost share, but internally we have capital and O&M. So there are kind of two systems, and we have there will be a lot of conversations back and forth to confirm what capital or O&M can be considered as the cost share, and which part can be covered by the federal grant. So with that figured out, we may go back and forth to adjust the technical the technology solution that we would like to propose in the proposal. So that will be a kind of lengthy process to sort out or to sort out all the potential issues. So before submitting the proposal. So normally the grant capture phase will take 1 or 1.5 years until we go to the pre-award negotiation. If the proposal is selected by the DOE or by the federal government, so the negotiation will I would say take more efforts than before, because that is because once we get the confirmation from the federal government that we are able to receive that federal funding, so that is when we engage more with the project or the planning process. We need to build in whatever the cost for this particular project for the next 3 to 5 years, so that all the corresponding costs will be considered. And meanwhile, we need to involve the regulatory commission to let them be aware of this project and all the corresponding technology scope, and as the cost share to be contributed. So the grant execution will take 3 to 5 years, depending on the project's life cycle. So I think for execution, we will have regular meetings with DOE to review the status of all the technical tasks, all the spending, or the cost share contribution. Meanwhile, we will work with external stakeholders to track all the spending and the technical deployment and the R&D efforts. So I think the last part for the life cycle is the project closing. So we may go through the audit process if the project budget go beyond a threshold. So that is basically the federal grant life cycle, and how we go through the grant application process. As I mentioned, the early communication and the socialization is the key to make sure all the stakeholders are stay in the loop and keep updated regarding the process of the ideation, collaboration, as well as the negotiation. Make sure we have sufficient resources to complete whatever the technology or the community engagement tasks we committed to the federal government. So yeah, I think I will stop here and see if we have any questions.
Thanks, Bo. Thank you, Dr. Lawrence, as well, for your presentation. We'll click through one more slide, just showing that we're going to Q&A. So I'm gonna kick us off with a question. I'll start with Teresa. What is a tip or trick or request that you have for state agencies who want to make sure these federal funds make their way into states and territories to support aggregated DER projects?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It takes a lot of planning, as we just heard from that real life example, a lot of planning, pre-planning even before. So just looking across the DOE, all of the offices, there are often opportunities for leveraging and pairing and stacking across the agency, but each program, especially if it's competitive versus formula, they have their own requirements. So you should always ask questions early on. There's no one size fits all for putting grants together. We've just heard about an example like with cost share or just the opportunity to stack opportunities like rebates with other grants. And so not only seeking opportunities across DOE, but then there are a lot of federal partners that also have opportunities in this space, thinking of EPA, thinking of USDA. So just asking early questions to understand what the statutory requirements are and just consult with as you're planning the projects, the local budget officers in the respective states and local governments to make sure everything is aligned. And also the way DOE is set up, each office and each program, they have their own TA. So just understanding the type of TA, the type of capacity to put an application together. As we know, TA means different things to every different organization in every different place. Could be like financial analysis, technical analysis, policy and programming, just the engagement and coordination, and then other needs, the permitting, the siting, interconnection, other like transmission and other grid components, and just the project development and management. We've seen some of the some challenges with putting applications together, but also challenges with implementing and as it relates to project management. So once there is an announcement, there's typically a webinar, a POC with an email to send questions into office hours. So that would help to understand the type of capacity that would need to be successful. So doing that fairly early on, engaging with community-based organizations as part of the partnerships, utility companies. And then there are also some that may have early admin funds. So that would be good to know upfront. You can start to bring on the staff and capacity that would be needed. And just adhering to the deadlines, especially for concept papers. That gives the green light to move forward to the next stage, so putting in the amount of time. And a lot of the opportunities have, like as far as the scoring criteria, developing community benefit plans, they're often 20% of the overall score. So a lot of these FOAs have like a template as a suggestion, just for following to meeting the 4 criteria of putting a sound CBP together, very important, as well as having a plan for compliance and enforcement on the back end to ensure that commitment to the community. So I think it's just part of the planning and the thoughtful process that needs to happen on the front end to be fully responsive. The FOAs can be in depth, and a lower lift we see coming through the prizes. DOE often announces prizes, and the goal there is to really promote and incent technological innovation by offering monetary and non-monetary benefits and encouraging a diverse set of innovators. So in addition to the grants, be on the lookout for prizes that can also be helpful to just get that early support and that assistance so you can ultimately prevail when you're applying for these awards.
Wonderful. Thank you. Really appreciate your insights there. And I have a question next for you, Bo. What would you do differently, or ComEd, maybe not you personally, do differently if you were to apply again?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, that the coordination is really the key. So if we can apply again, so definitely early communication and make sure we have all the resources being identified, because as you know, the concept paper and the full proposal doesn't give us much time to be fully, aware of all the resources we have. But if we can, definitely we can start the preparation even before the funding opportunity being announced. So I think um, uh, like I think we're gonna set up the regular meetings with the teams and the including external collaborators to understand what will be the state of art technology, the problem to address, and the resources we have, all the resources we currently have can leverage. So whenever there's a funding opportunity being announced, we can be very prepared. So that time, I think it will be, I would say the winning chance will be much higher than, than start the preparation within the 12 3 months. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. And following up on that, in that collaboration with external stakeholders, did you ever coordinate with your PUC or the regulator on the project proposal, or is it mostly with the DOE and other types of external stakeholders?
No, for now I'm not aware of any of them on our project team, but we just keep them updated regarding the status of the project, the technical stuff, and as well as the cost.
Yep, that makes sense. And then Teresa, you mentioned community benefit plans. Do you know, like, what are y'all looking for specifically in very technical proposals with respect to CBPs?
Well, generally they adhere to the 4 pillars of like the Justice 40, all of those objectives to ensure that 40% of the benefits flow to disadvantaged communities, diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. So having that equitable access to wealth building, contracting opportunities, minority business development, definitely having the opportunity to create quality jobs, to retain a skilled workforce, as well as a lot of engagement within communities, leading to formal agreements. So that's why you spoke about having the compliance on the back end. So those are the 4 pillars, like how the what I think is neat about the FOA is they're like prompts with questions, like based on the way the specific FOA is set up, the technology or whatever the energy infrastructure or the purpose and the objectives of the funding opportunity announcement. It would be specific, but they would all fall under those 4 pillars, just to make sure there is a plan. And 20%, that is significant as it relates to the rubric or scoring criteria. So just that engagement, that type of agreement and investment in the community as you are also pursuing the clean energy transition, just to ensure that parts of the community are not left behind.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for sharing that. I want to invite, are there any questions from the audience? You can either send it into the chat and I can relay it, or you can just come off mute and ask a question as well. We'd love to hear what questions you have for our speakers.
I guess I have one question from Michigan AG's office. I'm a consumer advocate over there, and is it all beneficial for utility to, maybe partner with their advocate in the state when they ask for the money from or one of these type of sources of money? And is that helpful at all in this process, or is it really just utility driven? And I'm just wondering what role a consumer advocate might play.
Yeah, I'd say it would depend on the specific FOA. I've seen some in the eligible applicants section where consumer advocates are specifically called out. They certainly have a role in the space to make sure that the objectives are beneficial to all, as as part of their mandate. So there are some where they can it may be able to be one of the teaming partners, subrecipients, or just in that advisory capacity. But it would just really depend on the specific FOA. But some definitely allow, because I've seen that when, just scrolling through, I've seen where consumer advocates are part of a teaming arrangement.
Thank you.
Thanks for your question, Michael. And I see the question in the chat. We'll definitely be posting the slides and recording to this presentation, and I think it takes about a week or two, but we'll be sure to send that out and send an email to folks with these resources as well and links. Any other questions from the audience? We definitely have time to take one or two more.
Yeah, my name is Sunday Balogun. I work for ICC. One of the things that we kind of want to see in this is how does ComEd or any utility collaborate with other stakeholders in determination with DOE? Where is that collaboration? Where is the middle of that collaboration?
I would refer to Bo on this one. I think you gave an example of the type of engagement ComEd had with the various offices. So maybe you can repeat that part for an actual example.
Oh, yeah. May I? Yeah, Sandy, can you please just repeat that question again? I want to make sure I understand that correctly.
So we're trying to look at the level of engagement does ComEd have with other stakeholders.
I'm sorry, the ComEd with
the level of engagement does ComEd
the level,
have?
yeah, level, yes. Yeah, I would say I will really case by case, depending on the size of the project. Previously, we work on the relatively smaller DOE grants that may involve the lab testing or smaller pilot project. So that we in our within ComEd we have emerging technology group to handle those pilot projects, and maybe work with several other teams. But for this specific IIJA grants, definitely we involve a lot of teams because we, as you can see, we have a large scope of deployment and R&D development. So that really involve like maybe 7 or 8 technology deployment across the Rockford area. So that they involve multiple feeders, maybe even thousands of customers. So in that sense, we gonna within ComEd, it's really it requires a lot of coordination and efforts for us to to figure out how to better move forward. So for that, even we are planning to develop a PMO, which is a project or program management office that have the group of expertise to help us coordinate all the efforts regarding the internal and the external coordination. So as well as the coordination and communication with the DOE.
Yeah, thanks for that. So would the output of your pilot will be made available to all stakeholders?
You mean to make it available to?
Yes, the result
Yeah.
of the result of your pilots, the result of your pilots is going to be made available to other stakeholders, and can a stakeholder have that input in their output?
Yeah, exactly. So I think throughout the process, we definitely work with the stakeholders, and because some technologies are provided by the stakeholders, they are not readily to be deployed. That's why we leverage the federal grant to support the maybe the R&D efforts for the first 1 or 2 years for them to develop that technology to be ready for the field deployment, and during the project definitely we will provide whatever the outcomes like we achieve and share that through DOE and make it public. But the specific technology developed by the technical vendors, I think that the IP will still I would say still stay with them. But whatever the findings, values we discovered, we will share that with the DOE and further publish any results through the conferences, journals, magazines, all those values.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Sunday, for your question, and thanks, Bo, for that response. I think I have one final question that I'd love for us to wrap with, and I think it really hits on the funding, the very real funding element of this conversation. So I think we'll start with Bo, and then we'll wrap with Teresa. Bo, how much effort is going into these applications that might not get funded? And how is ComEd funding the initial phase of the application process? And will those costs get recovered if they don't get the award? And how does that work out? And then from Teresa, I think I'd be interested in the DOE's perspective on this as well.
Yeah, I think for ComEd, really the early stage efforts is kind of additional to our daily job. So it's really I would say man hours to be invested into to coordinate and for the ideation, for reaching out, for concept paper, for proposal preparation, all those efforts actually, yeah. So are kind of additional to our daily project execution.
Yeah, and I would agree with that, putting on my hat from when I was with the State Energy Office. Like everything starts post-grant award. But you make a good point, the type of investment that's required to even get to that point. Once like the official period of performance after all of that negotiation process, like you kind of sort of have to find like the resources within and through partners just to get to that point. But then hopefully one would be successful. It's easy, of course, on the formula side of things, if it's just based on population and you can be relatively assured, but for competitive funding opportunities, that's why it's so key to have those partnerships, to just have like a really comprehensive offering where the results are, you can demonstrate that there will be some, reasonable level of assurance that you can perform. So the period of performance going forward after the grant funds are received, sort of where when the federal funds would kick in.
Yeah, I think actually have one more follow-up question to this. So for the sources of the matching funding, Bo, maybe you can speak to this. Is that from the ratepayer? Does it affect rate making processes? Is that maybe even from like some of those partnerships, if you are per what Teresa just mentioned, like what are some of those sources of the matching funding?
In the cost share?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So that's really depending on our conversations with a financial, our supply or plant accounting and as well as our legal who is familiar with all the compliance from DOE and also from regulatory perspective, which of them can be categorized as a cost share being the capital for example, and which of them has to be covered by the federal share. So those are, I would say that those are. I'm not the expert to provide the direct suggestion, but it's really really takes a lot of conversations, to make sure we are being compliant with all the requirements.
Yeah, thank you. And Teresa, I'm wondering if you want to close us out with any reflections on that.
No, I would agree. It's a very thoughtful process, like in kind support versus like the other resources that can be brought to bear. But just generally, it starts by being aware of the opportunities, trying to link through like based on what the goals are. Like state and local government should be thinking through like what their clean energy and infrastructure goals are, and then how to connect those goals with the opportunities that are coming out. So very often there could be like locally funded programming that can pair very nicely, and the federal can like sort of enhance, not to supplant, but definitely supplement the activity, and just really being aware of all of the deadlines coming up to avoid missing opportunities to leverage the funds. So it's really great that this session sort of focused on a lot of these opportunities. There are some that are planned, like the notices of intent, like keep an eye on those as well. So we know what is coming up. Make sure they're aligned with the budget cycles, the fiscal year of the particular state, local government, so that it can all work. And all of this can really enhance the infrastructure and the software solutions that can really help to move the needle with this technology.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. That's a perfect segue to the activity that we're about to do. So if everyone can join me thanking our speakers, either in the chat or with your reactions. Thank you so much, Teresa. Thank you so much, Bo, for joining us and giving us that comprehensive overview. I know this landscape is extremely complicated and vast, so we really appreciate you helping demystify it for us. So thank you. We're going to be transitioning into an activity, so I do encourage folks to stay, because the main goal of this workshop is to make things more actionable and feel like demystify these opportunities. So we're going to go into breakouts that are going to discuss either if you're part of a NARUC organization from the regulatory perspective, if you're part of a NASIO organization from the state energy official perspective. We'll have opportunities to have smaller group discussions and go into Mural to start thinking about, what information do you need from other stakeholders? What are some of the barriers to accessing and implementing this funding, and help you think through for your state or your territory or your jurisdiction, how can you start leveraging that? So if we could start sharing screen, I'll walk you through some instructions. And Katerina, I think it's the whole screen, so maybe we can reshare just the PowerPoint. All right, so the timing is incorrect now. We'll be pushing it back a little bit, but we'll be in breakouts together for about 20 minutes. So in those breakouts, we're going to have self-select, just so we don't have to manually send everyone into them. So you're going to see soon on your bottom ribbon to go into breakouts. We're going to organize folks that are part of state agencies that fall under NARUC members. So if you come from the regulatory perspective, and then NASIO members if you come from the State Energy Office perspective. And if you work for a state agency who aren't part of NARUC or NASIO, feel free to choose the breakout that you would like to listen in on. And if you are not part of a state agency, we do kindly request that you exit the meeting. This is a session specifically for NARUC and NASIO members in those perspectives. So thank you so much for joining.